Welcome back. Now, we're taking a segment focusing on the investment environment. You know, the Nigerian economy is in, well, murky waters, and the conversation everywhere is about how to diversify the economy and how to move it out of the position where it is, away from recession, and then we're looking at how to attract more investment into the economy while keeping the investment we have already. But the question also arises as regards regulations. What kind of regulations do we have? What are the laws that we have that will encourage the investors to come in or to keep the ones that we have and encourage more investment? Well, these are some of the things we'll be looking at today, and I have joining me for this conversation Mr. Bismarck Ruwani, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's begin with this question of what is, if I say what's the state of the economy, I don't say you know where the economy is right now, but
let's summarize that. Let's start from that.
Okay, so what's the state of the Nigerian economy?
The starting point of the conversation is that the Nigerian economy is facing serious headwinds, and that's normal. Everybody talks about it. We're in a recession, we know that. The President has alluded to that. Some have alluded to the fact that it's stagflation. No, you pass through stagflation when you get a recession. Recession is worse than stagflation. So the solutions are what we're talking about. Nigerians are tired of hearing about the problems. They know it, they feel it. It's difficult to mask misery because the opposite of misery is prosperity. All right? So the question is, what are we doing about it? Two things. One, there's the government side. The government is increasing the expenditure in the 2017 budget by 30%, 20-odd percent to 7-point-something trillion naira. But if you take 7 trillion naira and divide it by 305, which is the exchange rate to the official, and take 6 trillion naira last year and divide it by 199, there's actually a contraction of 15%. You need to grow the economy to create jobs, right? And you need to invest in the right sector. Now, government will do its part, and I think they're going to do much more than that.
Okay.
But you need private investment from domestic sources and private investment from international sources. To do this, you send the right signals by creating an environment, and we've heard that enabling environment is a cliche which nobody wants to hear about.
That's one thing.
People are sick and tired of hearing about it. Now, the focus of this discussion is about what should we not do. One of the things we should not do, and I'm going to focus on what they call combative regulatory environment, where the regulator becomes a combatant rather than being collaborative, right? And it's based on the chaos theory that you can thrive in chaos, right? And that the opposite of a regulated environment is anarchy, right? Mm-hmm. But anarchy can be useful in the sense that it can hold regulators to account, right? And that is what it is. So we have agreed that the government will increase expenditure, they say by 30%. They're going to have social programs, they're going to do that. But that's not going to create the jobs. The jobs that are going to be created is when domestic and private investors invest. Why would they invest? They invest because they see certainty, they see clear regulation, right? And they see ease of doing business.
Okay.
Right?
In the course of the conversation, you
Yes.
said something about a 15% contraction in the economy.
Yes, 15% contraction in the expenditure. Even though you have increased your expenditure by 30%, because the currency has devalued by 60%, effectively you have actually contracted in dollar terms by 15 or 20%. Yes.
And to get out of that point, we need to get private and public investment.
Yes.
But to even begin to get the investment, you need to look at the regulatory environment.
Yes.
What kind of regulations do we have now?
Well, you have regulations that are far from clear. You have regulations that are, some of them are clear, but I'm going to focus more on the penalties, right?
Okay.
And the enforcement of the penalties.
Okay, we do have a slide there, the chaos theory, where you talked about society without regulation is anarchy and,
yes.
and all of that.
And that's the chaos theory we're talking about. And people used to say companies can self-regulate. Self-regulation did not work. In the United States, it ended up with Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns going bust and almost brought the entire world down. Okay, so we have that problem, right? So you need some regulation, but you do not need combative regulation.
Let's look at how do you differentiate the regulation and the combative regulation?
Combative regulation is more in the implementation of the regulation. And if for example, there's an infraction, and there'll be infractions, and at times negligence, at times innocent mistakes, do you have a slap on the wrist? do you have a penalty to send a signal to others, don't do it? Or do you have, there's penalty and there's what they call a death penalty. A death penalty means you kill the person, right? And so when we go back into what kind of penalties have been inflicted on Nigerian corporates in the last couple of years, then you begin to ask yourself, why? And if that happens to somebody else who is there, why should I come and invest? That is what I mean by the signaling. Okay. So take, for example, in the FMCG space, Guinness was fined 2 billion naira and then reduced to 1 billion naira and all that for supposedly having expired drugs expired raw materials in a warehouse, which was totally untrue, right? But it sends, Diageo has been in this country for over 60 years and invested significant amount of money in this country in a three-way industry. And when they did that, eventually it was reduced or reversed, but it sent a lot of tremor and fear amongst people. Now, let us take MTN. MTN did not register 5 million subscribers. It was a security risk. MTN was perceived to be arrogant. MTN was perceived to be predatory and exploitative. Some of these things are exaggerated. However, what happened? There was a fine of $5 billion, which was equal to 7 years of its profitability, 5 times its capitalization, technically putting the company into insolvency. A company that has employed so much, has invested in, over the years, over $2 billion or so over the years in new investment, has affected productivity, because without, you can imagine, POS terminals, the settlement schemes and all that, not just MTN, the industry as a whole.
All right, we'll take a moment, when we'll come back, continue the conversation.
Absolutely.
Please don't go away. Welcome back. We're talking the economy and all that, but before we went on break, we were looking about the fines that were imposed on some companies here in Nigeria, especially in the telecoms industry. Mr. Iwan, you talked about MTN that was fined about 3 times or 5 times its...
No, 7 times.
Its
7 years profit.
7 years profit, 5 times
capitalization.
But how does that all tie in if they are meant to, I mean, not just them now, I mean other companies, if they are meant to even thrive in this economy?
No, but the point is that, one, you have to ask yourself, did MTN do something wrong? Yes. Should they be punished? Yes. But should the punishment be a death penalty? Should it be death by firing squad? Right? No. So, the point, what signal does it send? If these guys have invested $12 billion in research and development, $12 billion, they have invested 16 billion naira in their MTN Foundation. They've employed over 2,600 something people directly, and then indirectly loads and loads. They've actually, the industry as a whole has catalyzed productivity, because without the phones, if I'm traveling from Kano to Lagos to go and look for somebody, because I've phoned him already, I know he's not there, I saved that. So productivity gains have moved significantly, and that is a driver for economic activity. What does this mean? Are there ways you can penalize people without crippling them and decapitating them? Can you say, for example, go and list on the exchange? Yes. Look, do not declare dividend because reinvest it and employ people. Yes, you can do that. You would have sent a signal. But if I'm an investor trying to come into Nigeria, Sprint is trying to come into Nigeria, AT&T is going to say, well, if they did this to these guys, then I'm not going to come in there. So it's that signaling that is the important thing. Okay.
Now, there's a slide out there about the impact of investment. From what I see there, I see a decline, a gradual decline.
Not gradual, it's steep decline, because foreign direct investment has come down from a high of $11 billion about almost 10 years ago to $8 billion, and now it's minus 1.6 this year in terms of...
And all of this is tied to the issue of regulation? Well,
it's partly, it's not all. There are other things, the exchange rate mechanism which is not functioning properly, exorbitant interest rates, low productivity, enforcement of markets, ease of doing business, and competitiveness. It's a package, it's a whole lot of things, but one of the key things that is important is how you treat the people that are there already would send a signal to people so that they can come in. If not, they'll go to other markets.
Let's see if we can look at you talked about the telecommunication companies.
Yeah.
Let's look at the aviation industry, for instance. How has
in taking it, aviation has suffered because aviation by nature is highly regulated because of safety and maintenance and safety, and any mistake means that people get killed. So regulation on one hand, but the environment, the other environment in which they must have aviation infrastructure. What has happened in Nigeria is that aviation infrastructure and regulation have been put together. In other parts of the world, aviation infrastructure is concessioned out to somebody, and regulation is left where you come and say you must do this. The pilot must have this kind of hours. That must have that before rating. And if, for example, you make you do this and do that, they will investigate the cause of the incident or accident. That's regulation, but inefficient, right, and totally backward infrastructure, which makes it impossible for airlines to operate. And the airlines have to borrow money at exorbitant rates. They cannot have access to foreign exchange. They are undercapitalized, right? And therefore, they are facing very fierce regulation. They are facing extremely unfavorable business conditions, and they are totally uncompetitive, right? And so what happens is that everybody starts to suffer. The average delay out of Abuja for most of the flights in the last week was as long as 4 hours, and it's become an endurance test to fly domestically. But I think the work is going on. There are intervention funds that are being made available. Intervention funds only help to stop the problem, and then but in coming back to, you see, that is one sector. Well, you have to look at financial services. Look at a company like IBTC Stanbic for some supposed reporting inadequacies, which are unproven. They've not even published their accounts for the past 2 years, and it's beginning to have an impact. And these are companies that are audited by international best, the top 5. MTN, for example, audited, and then somebody comes up with a story that they took money out of Nigeria without, which is what you call a lynch mob. You see, when you have people just being harassed, right, and being penalized in very unclear circumstances and being investigated further by multiple agencies, it sends a signal that this place is extremely tough and very opaque.
So, Ron, this entire environment that we have, it has its effects and unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
Is it a question of the players there not understanding what they want to do? Because they'll tell you, we want to get the economy out of where it is, we want to come out to create more level playing field, bring in more investment. Is it that they do not understand exactly what they want to achieve, and then unintentionally they create this kind of environment?
You have to understand the pyramid of power. The political office holders, yesterday evening, we had eloquent presentations by Oken Alama, the Minister of Trade and Investment. We had Kemi Adeosun doing extremely well in terms of explaining what the financial objectives are and what we should expect in 2017. That's political office holders, right? And they said all that government was going to do and all that. I went further to counter by saying what we should not do. Under the political office holders and policymakers, there's regulation. If there's inconsistency between the vision of the political office holders and the regulation, the process of regulation, the unintended consequence of it is signaling. You say what you want to say, and the signal is different. You say you want people to come into Nigeria and they can get visa upon arrival, but when you get here, they just arrest you, and then the website doesn't work. So we should go beyond rhetorics and go into actuals. So what the ministers said yesterday is that we have got to actuals. They're doing the simple things, but simple, very significant things. We'll see the results in 2017. I'm optimistic that 2017 will be a better year. But the purpose of this conversation is that with all the best intentions, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions, we must ensure that there's a changed regulatory mindset which does not sound combative, which does not discourage people inadvertently, both those coming in and those even there to want to get out, so that we can encourage, because without investment, it is G plus I plus C in economics. Government, G stands for government, C stands for consumption. The consumers have no money because they are all wiped out.
And they're screaming.
And then the investors have to come in. I is what is investor. And investors are both domestic and international. our foreign direct investment, as you've seen from that graph, has come down sharply. We want to encourage those who are in to invest more and those who are out to come in. And let me take it back to telecommunications. The only people that can invest in modern technology, because you can have massive investment, and you know it in the media world. AT&T and Time Warner have merged. So you have seen people investing significantly in content. You have seen Apple, Facebook, and all of these guys. You cannot be left out. So you need Etisalat, you need Airtel, you need MTN, you need Glo to invest in base stations. You cannot be harassing them all over the place and thinking that they will invest when their margins are down. 50 naira a minute 15 years ago when the naira was 115, and today 11 naira a minute when the naira is 400. A minute call is less than 1 cent today in dollars. Go anywhere in the world and see whether you can get a minute call for even 5 cents.
So going forward, what should we do?
What we should do is, first of all, to think right? Because, first of all, think, right? And then think right. Because, you see, Nigeria has a problem of literacy, but that's not even a big problem. Literacy is compounded with ignorance, and ignorance compounded with arrogance. So when you have pseudo-illiterates who are ignorant, who are arrogant, and are actually entrenched in confusion, the outcome is what you have. So we need to ensure that policymakers' views, regulatory, are consistent, consumers are actually made aware with not just literacy programs, which is what we invest in, but programs that make everybody think, and collective followership that can hold leadership accountable.